A brilliant and invigorating discussion on creating sustainable cultures of change. And as you heard, it will take commitment, seeds of incremental change, and the boldness of thinking ahead as we begin the process of transformation in change management. It is hashtag FOHR and hashtag future of HR, as well as hashtag HR heroes across our social media platforms. And we love to hear from you. I'm going to read 2 tweets from you as you are engaging with us across Twitter, more specifically. I've got one from @Sir_M_Charles, and he says, a few hours into the session, into the program, but I have acquired some much knowledge. And then a response to our previous panel discussion that we have with Old Mutual, I have Malum_Grand saying, getting financial classes at an early age would play a pivotal role in terms of growing a generation that is mindful of how to use money and respect it, and also go as far as investing it in the right sectors. Definitely so. And I love that we're hearing from not only the mature audience, as one would love to imagine, but also young people, which really perfectly ties into Mega Trend 3, which is a critical one that addresses not only the consequence of socioeconomic issues and leadership, but the hope that we have not only for Southern Africa, but the African continent, which is almost 60% of Africa's population under the age of 25, making Africa, of course, the world's youngest continent. We're dealing with youth and skills development in our next panel discussion, addressing youth unemployment in South Africa, looking at innovative job creation and solutions.
I have been unemployed for 2 years and 8 months now, since completing a Bachelor's of Arts in Development Studies degree at the University of Venda. I feel like unemployment in our country is a pandemic on its own, and it is very depressing. There is no hope for a better tomorrow. Those who have had jobs previously are now being retrenched in huge numbers. This is an excerpt from a report by Health E News on youth unemployment in South Africa, sharing the story of 29-year-old Matome Charles Rasegala, who, not being able to find a job, has left him depressed, with no hope of finding unemployment despite holding a bachelor's degree, a computer diploma, a driver's license, as well as a security certificate. These are the stories behind the new data revealing that 7.8 million South Africans were out of a job in the second quarter of 2021, the highest rate since 2008, according to Statistics South Africa. The unemployment rate now stands at a record high of 34.4%, one of the highest levels in the world. At the back of this bleak story painted by the data, we want to take the opportunity in this conversation to address youth unemployment in South Africa with a laser focus on innovative job creation, systems and solutions that are transformative, and what that means for industry and the economy in peeling these solutions that are ripe for the season. I am Vuyolwethu Dubese, your moderator for this conversation, and an absolute pleasure it is to be joined by a panel of experts who bring a wealth of knowledge and who have been working very intimately across various stakeholders and industries across the country to address the issue that brings us to the table today. Ladies and gentlemen, joining me today is Thato Maditla, the Human Resources Director at the Youth Employment Services South Africa. We're also joined by Alexandria Proctor, the co-founder and CEO, as well as the head of product for Digs Connect. And rounding off our panel today is Philippa Geard, the CEO of Recruit Graduate. Thank you all for taking the time to join us today. Now, the context of this conversation is quite critical, as it goes beyond the numbers to not only the millions of stories like Matome's, but the triggers to the ebb and flow of the market that comes when events like the COVID-19 pandemic happened, to the recent government local elections, as well as the recent launch of the second phase of the presidential employment stimulus. As we open up this conversation. Tato, I'm going to kick off with you as Utunyiwe. With the SA Youth being supported by the presidency, yes, the National Youth Development Agency, as well as Harambe as part of the Presidential Youth Employment Intervention. The aspiration of getting to 1 million jobs for youth in South Africa through YES. Journey us through that target as well as the interventions that organizations are taking to get there.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Vuyo. So you touched on a very critical point around the journey of our youth in South Africa. So the reality is that a lot of our youth go into university and they get their qualifications, excitingly so, but they can't find opportunity in the marketplace. So at Youth Employment Service, we are an NPO that is business driven and business initiated out of a call by the president to actually solve the youth unemployment crisis in South Africa. A lot of what we do is really to try and create the first opportunity for that young, talented individual that wouldn't ordinarily have actually been given an opportunity to make something for themselves. So we do this through various ways, and a lot of it is really to partner with organizations, small businesses, large organizations, to basically create jobs for the youth across the country, and we do it through placements through organizations, or we actually place the youth through our implementation partners, which are all over the country. The aim really is to try and give a youth a 12-month exposure program for them to actually gain the skills that could actually elevate them in terms of gaining permanent employment and in essence participate in the economy of South Africa. It has been quite a huge challenge. You mentioned the 1 million job target that we had set for ourselves in collaboration with government and the presidency. And while it hasn't been an easy journey, a lot of it has actually come with quite a lot of successes in terms of creating, thus far, with no state funding, 67,000 jobs for the youth in South Africa. And the aim is to actually improve and build on that, obviously with collaboration from the different sectors and businesses within the country.
Absolutely. And I think a big theme of this, I think in getting to the 67,000 and getting these students, these young people to become active participants in the economy is the call to partnerships. And I think, maybe it being something that should be enforced, right, for lack of a better term, in order to really create these sustainable and innovative measures when we're looking to job creation. As we're staying along the theme of partnerships, Alexandra, I want to bring you in to this conversation with Digs Connect, which is the largest student accommodation marketplace on the African continent. And I want to say this because you pair registered students and young professionals who are looking for a place to stay with owners across South Africa. Now, understanding the socioeconomic challenges faced by students in South Africa who come from lower income backgrounds, some without bursaries or opportunities, housing, as we've seen, particularly at the start of the university period, it can become a challenge. Painting a picture for me, I think when it comes to the market and the effect that it has on students prior to COVID and during COVID, and I think also just how illustrating how partnerships that you've created, such as with the Michael and Susan Dell Foundation, has become a catalyst in your model and the impact that you employ. And I think I'm very curious if there are any interactions between the students and the young professionals, or is it a relationship solely based on housing?
That's a big question. I was sort of writing notes as you went there, so I hope I don't miss anything, because there's a lot to kind of pull apart there. I think you started kind of talking around the challenges that financial needs students are facing when it comes to housing with higher education, and it's huge. I mean, I spend my life thinking about this and solving this, and working with different partners from the academic sector to the property sector, trying to figure this out. I mean, this is what DexNext is doing, and it's honestly, it's messy. It's messy. I think
you look at it because big solve, right?
It's huge. I mean, I think there's just also so much expectation here. We put so much pressure on this idea that, the youth is the future of this country, it's the next generation, and like we have to get it right. Especially with unemployment statistics, we have to get it right. We have to make sure that these students that are coming from disadvantaged backgrounds are getting the opportunity to go to university, but also like importantly complete their university studies. I mean, dropout rates are huge, and one of the biggest reasons students are dropping out is because they're not staying in environments that are academically conducive. They can actually study where they feel safe, where they feel like this is a place where they can get the holistic support that you need. Being a student is tough. And you take these other extra, factors into account, it gets even harder. You look at South Africa's got 2.3 million students, and of that, 800,000 are funded by NSFAS, your National Student Financial Aid Scheme, which means they fall into the financial category. But of course, and above that, you have your missing middle, which are students that are just as financially needy, but just can't get NSFAS funding. So now they're reliant on, going to find bursaries or, private sector bursaries or gap funding from universities, facing the same struggles there. And just because it's such a big number of students and such a big system, the complexities are just huge. And I feel like the government hasn't embraced technology and utilized as well as they could. I mean, looking at the journey of a student who has to now apply to university. Let's say the student comes from, like I'm from the Eastern Cape. You have to go online, get access to the internet somehow, apply to university, and then after that, then go to NSFAS, apply to NSFAS, then wait to hear back, then write your matric exams, and then it's January now. You still don't know what's happening. University's starting in, let's say 30 days. You have to wait and see what happens, but hopefully nothing's gone missing along the way. You get your numbers. Now you finally got it. Now university's starting in 2 days. Now you have to find accommodation and pay for your accommodation and get the leasing. It is honestly, it's really, really difficult for students. And on top of that now, so you're starting with the back foot and now trying to go straight into, university is really hard. First year is a huge adjustment from school. I mean, you cover your entire matric syllabus, in the first month, basically, of varsity. You have to kind of keep going. And there's dropout rates, and this is a whole new world you're in, you're out of home. So it is a really scary time. And that's why Digs Connect is, so much more than just a platform. It's understanding this critical stage of the journey for students is so important. If we want to break these poverty cycles in South Africa and really get students through that, like making sure we have this holistic support from, where you're staying to your teachers on campus is so important. I mean, I feel like I've spoken a lot already. I can't even get into everything else, but we did actually release a report on this. Digs released a report called The State of Student Housing 2020 last year. It's on our website. The International Finance Corporation actually took notes from our reports and released their own reports on that. So that's also online. And we are working with different partners. So you mentioned the Dell Foundation, which are incredible partners. They've been doing amazing work in South Africa, running programs across universities. They also offer a lot of bursaries. So we work with them to make sure their students are housed, and also across the broader sector. And a lot of other partnerships I feel like I can't really get into now because I'm running out of time. But yeah, there's a lot of opportunity to do good here. There really is. I think we just need to get the right people in the room and really leverage what technology can do in the space.
Absolutely. Well, I want to stick with you for, I know you feel like you've spoken a lot, but I'm loving the information that you're bringing through. But one thing that you've highlighted very early on in your response was the idea around community and how much that plays a role into students, and especially because there's so much in the process, and sometimes information gets lost, and money sometimes gets lost in the whole process. How important is community and perhaps support that Digs Connect emphasizes for students?
So this is more the softer side of it. There's the hard lines of building this and the financials and the models. But the softer side is the human experience, like what's going through someone's mind when they arrive on campus the first time. What's the psychology of it? What makes someone decide to stick it out and push through the hard times? And what we believe it is a huge part of that is a community. Often, if you go to a new town, you uprooted from the community you're used to and you place a new one, and you have to make new friends. And I mean, when I moved to Cape Town, maybe it's just Cape Town, it's very, I really struggled at first to kind of really find my group, where I belonged, who my people were. And it's tough, if you don't have those friends you can call and be like, hey, it's been a tough couple of days, or I'm struggling with this assignment, or oh my gosh, I feel so completely overwhelmed by everything right now. Like, where do I turn to? And having the community. And I think that, Digs Connect is really built on this idea of it's social living, it's a idea of like social housing, that in a house you're sharing with 3 or 4 or 5 other students, you're in a building with other students, you can connect, you can have those intangible moments where you're making coffee together at 2 o'clock in the morning, cramming for the exam the next day, and the sense of camaraderie, the sense of, we're all in together. I think it does make the journey a lot easier, but it's so hard to quantify these things. When you sit across the boardroom table with, big executives trying to talk about how to make students succeed, talking about these the softer aspects of what it takes to be happy, you know, as a student. And I think that happiness is what makes students kind of push through. So it is a challenge, but I think we just need to have people, you know, throwing out innovative, out the box thinking here, and that just being embraced.
Absolutely. And Philippa, I'm glad you mentioned innovative and out of the box thinking. And I think as we're peeling the layers of this marketplace of unemployment, for lack of a better term, Philippa, let's bring you into this conversation, because when we're talking about recruiter graduate, there's something that you talk about being smart recruitment. What exactly does smart recruitment mean? And for who is this for?
Thanks, Vuyo. So let me just give you a little bit of context for Recruiter Graduate, which is that I have two companies. I have Recruit My Mom and I have Recruiter Graduate. Recruit My Mom was started because I really believed that women with children were marginalized in the recruitment market and needed a space where they could unapologetically be mothers and find work that was either in office or remote, but that there's a level of flexibility to it. And in 2019, I was listening to a speech by President Ramaphosa about the plight of the youth, and I was deeply moved by what was going on. And I wanted to be part of the solution. And as a small medium enterprise, I wanted to go out and hire an intern. And I found the process really difficult. I was, you know, it was just, as a business owner, it was quite arduous to go and find this person. And so I decided to white label Recruit My Mom into Recruiter Graduate and become part of the solution to the graduate unemployment problem. And the smart recruiting is about how we have created this platform, which, like Recruit My Mom, where you unequivocally are unapologetic about being a mother, you're unapologetic about the fact that you're a graduate, be it from college or university, saying, I'm a new entrant into the market. I don't have a lot of experience behind my name, but I'm looking for an opportunity. And then what we do is we bring our professional recruiting skills to bear, and we are able to use technology as an enabler, and then our personal professional skills to be able to bring the best of those graduates to an employer. And so the whole recruiting process for an employer, for an intern or for a graduate, is just so much less time consuming, and they are able to then, you know, really be able to choose from the best of the best. And that's what we do.
Thank you so much for that, Philippa. And I think as we're talking to, I think, bridging this conversation, or rather creating this bridge between the students as well as the employer, and we're talking about skills, right? I want to stick with you for a brief moment and also bring Thado into this question. And that is of critical skills versus critical roles, which can become a game changer in how students can employment, or they can employ opportunities like internships. Philippa, from this lens, how can organizations improve or rather innovate their recruitment process and make it smoother for graduates to approach them, or rather to lift that veil of intimidation, which I'm sure you're privy to in having these conversations with these graduates. And for you, Thado, in the same breath, you know, through the programs and the platforms that are offered by Yes4Youth, how are you preparing them? And is there this common language or bridge in this connection between the organization's critical role and the prospective employees or the opportunity that they have with this critical skills that they should be providing? Philippa, let's start with you.
Yeah, I think, you know, the conversation around critical skills is vitally important, because when we're talking about critical skills, we're not just talking about the here and now. And in South Africa, we've got a here and now problem, but we've also got a future problem. And I think that one needs to consider both. Is how do we immediately affect the current youth unemployment problem, but then there's a longer macro discussion that needs to be had in terms of how does one affect it long term. And we know that the critical skills that are really needed right now are all related to the fourth industrial revolution, and I mean something like the health sector. You know, we're going to have a nursing crisis in South Africa if we don't sort out the nursing issue in South Africa. And there's certain skills that are needed, but there's a combination of what do we do now and in the future? So I think from a future point of view, there's a macro discussion around education and a big education part, which companies can play a large role in, but so does government. So starting from ECD through to prep, to high, to tertiary, what does that look like in terms of a long-term skills analysis of what the country, not just our country, but other countries are going to need? You know, we're going to have, in Africa, we're going to have more youth available for an aging population in the Western world that we can export incredible skills to in the future. So it is important to look at what we need, but it's also to look at what the rest of the world needs. But then in the here and now, we know that there's a critical skills shortage. So employers, what we do with employers is we talk about aptitude and attitude and how one can find these youths, and that's where us providing this service, a human intervention service, is to find youth that have the aptitude and attitude and ability to be able to adopt a lifelong learning process of bringing on these critical skills. And I think it is this collaboration, and employers are needing to make a mind shift of the fact that perhaps these skills aren't available immediately, but I can play a role in ensuring that it can be built into somebody even if they don't have them right now. So it's very much a journey, yeah.
And for you, Tato, in the same breath, through the programs and the platforms that are offered by Yes for Youth, how are you preparing them? And is there, you know, this common language or bridge in this connection between the organization's critical role as well as the prospective employees' critical skills?
Thank you so much for that, Vuyo. And I think for me, I resonate a lot with what Philippa spoke about. And a lot of it is around providing an opportunity for a youth that has aptitude and attitude, because that truly does make a difference. So for Yes, a lot of what we have founded our philosophies and processes and systems on is around providing quality work experience. So what this means is that we actually monitor and evaluate ourselves in terms of the quality of the experience that we're providing the youth in terms of the 12-month-long program that they're on. And we do this through ensuring that there is upskilling and reskilling for the youth that placed at a client. And what will happen is that we'll give every youth that registers with us that gets placed, we'll give them a cell phone, and with the cell phone will come an app. And in the app is basically an e-learning platform that provides all these types of critical skills that are important for them to actually succeed in their program. And not only is it critical that the training happens and that they are upskilled for the jobs that they've been placed into, we then close the loop by ensuring that there is a feedback loop from the team leaders that are supervising them. And those team leaders in essence provide ongoing feedback through surveys around whether there is impact in terms of the training interventions. So very important that there is a narrative shift within organizations that not everybody that is talented has to have a qualification or has to have 5 years or 10 years work experience. Some of the best people and talented people that you're going to meet are people that wouldn't have ordinarily have had access. So this can be somebody that comes from a village in Eastern Cape, a village in Harangua, in Limpopo. So if we do not change our mindsets around what talent actually is and the perceptions around that, we could potentially actually miss out on untapped talent. And we see that people that are experienced, that are senior, are very expensive. So why not groom your own talent? Why not use organizations such as Yes, such as the one that Philippa is running, to create these opportunities for these talented individuals? Because you never know if your next Einstein could potentially come from somebody that really just needed a chance. They needed somebody that could actually bet on them.
Absolutely. And I think that the missing point, right, is really that opportunity. An opportunity can come through Yes, can come through Rent to Graduate. And I think it's so important that we highlight these opportunities. And what I appreciate also about your response is this feedback loop that we keep talking about, because these processes need to be put in place and we need to measure you know, how far from the 1 million that you are, but also to your point around the definition of talent and how broad it is, and the fact that it doesn't just need to be just cornered into the private sector or just you know, these big organizations, but SMEs as well, that have an opportunity to play a role and have a big contribution to our GDP. Alexandria, I cannot wrap up this discussion without the mention and offering my congratulations on your recent presidential appointment as part of the new 7-member board for the National Youth Development Agency. So my congratulations to you in that. The president also stated that they see the NYDA as a vital partner in the implementation of the presidential youth empowerment intervention, as well as ensuring that young people are prioritized as part of the presidential employment stimulus. What are some of the critical matters that you hope to commit to and enforce that students, graduates, and the unemployed are facing as a result of COVID, but also how we can assist them? And I know that you're a staunch advocate for entrepreneurship, and particularly technology and tech entrepreneurship. So perhaps they could form part of the list?
Absolutely. Yeah, again, it's so much I want to say here, so trying notes so I don't miss anything. First of all, thank you so much. It was quite a tough process, and I was shocked. I remember when I got the phone call, I couldn't believe it. So I'm very excited about that. The appointment officially starts on the 1st of December. So until then, still trying to get to grips with everything. Obviously, a lot to catch up on. Getting a lot of correspondence. It's got a lot of people have a lot of strong opinions about the NYDA. And I think it's because, you know, the youth situation in South Africa isn't where we want it to be right now. And as, you know, the national body for, you know, the agency that's supposed to, you know, promote youth issues, it kind of falls on our shoulders to get this right. So I know from 1st of December, we're picking up a big load and we've got a lot of expectations that we really have to get it right. And I mean, there's so much more to dive into that. But the first thing I want to say was just, you know, talking about everyone that suffered because of COVID. And I think COVID, I mean, obviously it goes without saying, it draws a line in history. There's the before COVID time, and then there was the dreadful time of during COVID. Now we're kind of going to the post-COVID time. And I think that, you know, I think we can't look back and be like, oh, when we get back to normal. I think there is no back to normal. I think it's a new world that we've got into. I think things have changed, you know, absolutely. And one of the changes, you know, is this very rapid adoption of technology. I think that things that would have taken 10 years happened almost overnight, you know, like everyone had to go digital very quickly. And there's this very fast adoption. And even though COVID was terrible in so many ways, continues to wreak havoc on people's lives and health and livelihoods, I think that this massive rapid adoption of technology showing that we actually can, when there's enough like impetus and there's enough force and there's enough like you know, the environment is right for it, like the adoption of technology can happen really fast. And we can solve a lot of problems really quickly. I mean, how do we get the entire world to mostly carry on working, you know, kids to carry on going to school, students to carry on learning, like in a completely different environment through a pandemic, you know, still carry on getting degrees, churning out graduates despite this, because we use technology, you know, like Zoom and Teams, which we're on right now. The fact that even a few years ago, we probably had this panel, you know, sitting in person, we have to fly around the country and, you know, make it work. But now we can sit here, you know, in our offices and have this call right now. I mean, hopefully I don't spend the rest of my future on Zoom because I do miss personal interactions, and a day of Zoom meetings is not what I imagined for my life. But we can, you know, when the will is there, we can use technology to drive these initiatives. And so that's why I think also going into this, I think that, I mean, I've said before my previous answer, I'm going to say it again, because I really want to push this heavily as much as I can. I think, you know, often as a board role, it's more kind of corporate governance. You know, you're doing auditing, you're doing corporate governance. It's not very glamorous stuff. So I don't know how much scope I'll have to push, like, you know, projects. The one thing I really want to do is just like the massive and widespread adoption of technology. We talk about all the time, but let's use in the government, you know, and I really want to partner with, spoke about partnerships earlier, partner with entrepreneurs and startups. You know, I'm part of the Cape tech ecosystem here, and there's such cool stuff coming out. Like, they're the most incredible people that are so innovative. You know, these scrappy young entrepreneurs that are building they're building technology around us that is like blowing my mind. And I think let's work with this, like I think as public sector needs to work with these startup entrepreneurs, these technologists that are building the solutions and still trying to reinvent the wheel and, do it for 10 times the price, 100 times the price, work with entrepreneurs on the ground that are figuring it out, on a shoestring. And then by this collaboration, by this partnership, bring about solutions like that. So I definitely take as much as I can of my startup, scrappy, tech-first approach into governments, and I think it's going to be almost like the collision of two worlds there. But yeah, we'll see how it goes.
Definitely. So exciting times, sounds that are quite ahead. And perhaps, Philippa, as you recruiting moms, you're recruiting graduates, perhaps the third organizations could be recruit an entrepreneur. And as we take the time, I'm going to take this opportunity to wrap up in closing, but not before I get your closing remarks. And I think putting this question, as Alexandria was talking about the absorption of this innovation and these out-of-the-box thinking kind of solutions, they need to be created and they need to be stimulated in an environment that enables them to do so. And my last question as we bow out, and I'm going to give each of you 2 minutes to try and answer this question. But if you were putting a policy proposal in front of the relevant stakeholders, what are perhaps 3 challenges or 3 solutions that you would put to the table and put to the stakeholders? And Philippa, I'm going to swing the pendulum back to you as we get your response to this question as well as your closing remarks. Could recruited entrepreneurship be one of those?
Oh, I do love that. But I think that within our 110,000 database of moms and nearly 70,000 graduates, that possibly there's a couple of good entrepreneurs in there for you. I actually think that entrepreneurial skills are very important. Even in the context of working for somebody. So companies like Alexandria's, I'm sure, they employ people who are strong in entrepreneurship, even though they're not running their own companies. So I think that mindset is essential. So yes, possibly, I think it's a great idea. But to get to your big question, if I could have 2 minutes to be able to speak to policymakers in South Africa, what would I say? I have quite a lot of things I would want to say, but the first one I want to talk to is the cost of data in this country. Alexandria is right, is that technology is an enormous enabler in this country, but it is also one of the biggest divides between the haves and the have-nots. And we see on the applications where we have with graduates, is the cost of data just to fill in your CV online or upload your CV, or to have a Zoom call when you've got to have an interview, that it's just, the cost of data has got to come down. So Alexandria, if you guys do anything, please, that's got to be important, that's got to be right up there, because once you enable people to be able to participate in an economy technologically, it opens up so many doors for them. So that would be my one big thing. The second one is got to be around load shedding. Business confidence is absolutely hit at the moment. So we are engaging all the time with businesses, thousands of them. And we can see an immediate trend up and down of business confidence. And just being able to keep the lights on consistently will give businesses confidence to be able to start employing. You can't expect businesses to employ and invest in talent when their confidence is very low in the economy and in the nation's ability to run this economy and to grow this economy. So that would be I'm not picking any small rocks here, these are big rocks. And then the other one would be that you actually incentivize businesses to employ the youth beyond what is currently happening. So it's not just about employing the 100 and the 200 or the 50. It's about employing one. youth. And if you can get even the smallest micro enterprise to employ one youth and give them a meaningful experience, you have made a difference. And I do think that the incentives that are being put to companies need to be looked at. I think tax incentives is an easy one to do, and it goes across the board, and it can touch from micro to very big organizations. So those, I'm only going to choose 3 because I'm sure the others have got others. I have a list of probably about 7, but those would be my 3 is sort out the data costs, sort out the electricity situation in this country, and then incentivize companies to employ the youth.
Absolutely. And perhaps with next year's conversation, which we can unpack the other 4. I'm very hopeful, Philippa. Tado, the very same question to you.
Awesome. So Philippa mentioned giving incentives to organizations or businesses. So as yes, we actually do have an incentive for job creation for the youth. So we do give a triple BEE level up to 2 levels if an organization does want to actually make a difference. So just a note for everybody that is wanting to drive impact while also benefiting the organization. Yes, it's definitely an option in that regard. So Vuyo, I think for me, I've really just thought about 3 elements that I think could actually drive impact. The first one, which is quite critical, I'm sure which will resonate with a lot of HR professionals, is career coaching at high school level. As an HR professional, I've worked in organizations where people are just unhappy with the chosen career fields, with the qualifications that they've studied. And when I've thought about it, it boils down to not empowering our citizens to know what their natural strengths are, what their natural talents are. And I think coaching can really be a driving force in actually accelerating and changing a lot of how people get into deciding what they're wanting to do for their careers. So I think that's the first thing, incorporating career coaching in high school modules and subjects and so forth, and empowering really our youth to basically make self-informed decisions which are aligned to what their highest potential is. And the second one is driving, so for government to basically focus a little bit more around partnerships. So what we saw is that not one organization has to solve all the world's issues, right? So there's quite a lot of value in bringing a couple of stakeholders that are like-minded, that have the same vision and passion, to basically say, how do we, in essence, maybe build more hubs or business incubation centers, as an example, or how many hubs do we actually have in the country, and how do we leverage off of those? So I think very critical that we almost all come together and collaborate in terms of solving for the challenge as a collective, and not have a silos way of solving this really big challenge that we faced with, which is with unemployment. And then the last one is really Alexandra with the NYDA. I know these are potentially discussions that you'll probably be looped into around actually with your pathway management network, right? So a lot of the conversations that we as YES have also pleaded to the NYDA is, how do we give preferential sort of treatment or benefits to youth who are wanting to actually fund their own businesses? So it's really about removing barriers for a young person that wants to start up their own business, which obviously with the right skills, with the right level of thinking in terms of a business plan, capacitating them in terms of that, but really not making it difficult for them to access capital. So I think those would be the quick wins in terms of what could really work from a short-term point of view.
Absolutely. Quick wins for some short-term solutions that we're peeling. Alexandria?
First, I want to say, just how blown away I'm excited by the response we've got. It's been amazing. I think both, just the panelists, the quality of content has been absolutely incredible. Actually taking notes, and you can be rest assured at our first board meeting, I'm going to bring you all these points up. There's some really good ideas, and I'll pretend that I came up with all of them because they're excellent. There's some really, really good points there. I think I'm just so excited thinking about the passion we have in this country. And it's just, there's so many bad news stories about South Africa, but there actually are so many incredible people working so hard to make it work. And this just proved it to me again. But my 3 things basically I wrote down there is, well, first, what everyone said was brilliant. The one thing I had there is just, is making South Africa more attractive for foreign investments. So that means things like, clean audits. I mean, it's very basic. Like, you have to have clean audits. You can't have a bucket with a hole at the bottom. Like property rights being inviolate, that has to be absolutely sacred. You're not going to come build a business if it could be pulled out from your feet any second. So I think those are big things, really inspiring foreign investment like that. I love the idea of partnerships also linked to electricity. So I think really working with like public-private partnerships, really just opening the doors there, being like, we don't have to solve problems ourselves. There are people who are specialized in these things. Let's work together and get us across the line. And often you'll find that when you open up to market forces, you get a really good result, and just let people's ingenuity work there. So there's two there. And the third thing I'd say is making employers' lives easier, like incentivizing employers to want to employ, because right now it's not really set up like that. Like, you kind of are disincentivized to employ, to employ, I guess is the word. So really just changing that a bit. So I mean, we spoke about tax incentive. I think that's a really good idea. And just making it a bit more like friendly, really providing more incentives there, I would say. So those are my 3 points.
Absolutely. Well, at this point, I'd like to thank the opportunity to thank my guest, Thato Maditla, the Human Resources Director at the Youth Employment Services South Africa, Alexandria Proctor, the co-founder, CEO, and head of product for Digs Connect, and Philippa Geard, the CEO of Recruit a Graduate, and possibly next year Recruit an Entrepreneur, for this brilliant conversation. It is indeed no silver bullet, a big conversation, big questions that are being asked, and of course some of the solutions which have been brought forth to the table. We look forward to your engagement. This has been a live broadcast at the HR Future Summit.
If there's definitely one thing that I took from that discussion, it's that we fundamentally have to be able to have these critical discussions, but also rethink how we think, to design, to how we redistribute, where we invest our skills, and how we mine them for the future. Truly a fruitful engagement for the future of HR and that of Africa. Youth, technology, human-centered design, compensation, communication, culture are